So, Junt, how is it going, my friend?
It's going well. It's going well.
It's good to hear. So we've first, I just want to say thank you for, the amazing opportunity to be able to play test the Autumn and Carnival, early on before any beta or anything.
Right.
I think I speak for everybody that played yesterday when I say that we had a ton of fun just playing on those two maps. It was a really good time, and they're definitely looking forward to more. But kind of the point of what we're doing today is just to kind of get a feel of the history of these maps, as well as your kind of goals and whatnot, as well as kind of what's in store for Pavlov in the future. So kind of to
Sure.
focus on the maps and stuff. So like I said, on a big Carnival, they've been a blast to test out, and we all, like I said, had a ton of fun playing those two maps. So starting from the beginning, when did Vankrupt first decide that they're going to make two more maps?
It was just it was born out of the idea that we needed better designed S&D maps. As you know, uh, some of the leagues, both VRML and the Shack leagues, they prefer a lot of non-vanilla maps in the map pool,
Mhm.
and it's generally regarded as it's because we have a lack of really good balanced maps. So we've always tried to rectify that and continue to do so. We've made some mistakes in the past by trying to deviate from the typical S&D layout formula. That was kind of a result of Station, and that is not a very well liked S&D map at all. But that was sort of us trying to attempt to do something different, and of course it didn't really work out too well. However, it is a good map for TDM and all the other game modes, and especially I feel like a lot of people like the horror version. Playing it with the hide, they seem
Oh
to
yeah.
like that map a lot.
Mhm.
I really like the horror version because it's like super super dark. Um, but yeah, that's really sort of what kind of called for it and why we felt we needed to create more vanilla content.
That's
And
I was gonna say that's totally fair. I've definitely like enjoyed Station, and you mentioned the night version of it, so that was definitely, I definitely have had some fun playing the hide on that map. But it's good to see that you guys are striving for higher quality maps and whatnot. And I think too, like you got to make a few maps and figure out what was good about them and what's not to keep improving. And so I think, especially having played Autumn and Carnival yesterday, as soon as I stepped into Autumn, I can immediately tell, wow, like everything just feels so like thought out and like well planned. Not to say that the other maps weren't, but it it felt really refined. Like everything had kind of a purpose. So it's really nice to see that for sure.
those are the first two maps that we produced internally with our own art team.
Mm.
So previously we had a partnership with Upsurge, which was a third party game studio that, a lot of game studio, like a lot of games hire other studios to help create art because they don't have the staff to make it
Mhm.
possible, or for various reasons, as you can
Right.
imagine, why you would want to outsource. So we started building our own art team internally because I guess we're just control freaks like that. So these two maps are the first sort of results of a complete in-house art team. So we feel like we raised the bar there, especially with the quality. Much to a little bit of my dismay, because sometimes our artists like really overanalyze the like quality, like spending a lot of time on the assets.
Mhm.
And uh, as a person that concerns about budget, I that's just naturally me. Kind of put a little sweat in my forehead there, but the results are we're like really happy about it. I remember when we first got everything merged down and into a playable state, and when I put on the headset for the first time and saw it, in VR, I was like, good Lord, like this is really beautiful map. That
Yeah.
was Autumn. So Autumn came first, and then Carnival came second. So I'm not sure if everybody knows that, but yeah, we teased Autumn first before Carnival ever sort of.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's some really cool effects on Autumn. One is over towards B main, just a little library or whatever that has the light rays coming through the window. Like that was a really cool effect just to see.
I love like that.
And I don't want to spoil too much, but there's
Hmm.
some other really cool like visual and audio effects that just help make the map feel really alive and really kind of like interactive, which is really cool to see. And speaking of art and themes and all that, so Autumn, to my knowledge, takes place in a European town right by the River Bay, and then Carnival is this abandoned Russian carnival right next to some industrial block, nuclear reactor, whichever you want to call it. So
Yeah.
when did the actual like themes of like we're gonna put Autumn in like this European town and we're gonna come up with like a carnival, when did those themes kind of become conceptualized?
That was all done by our level designer Wesley, which uh, if y'all aren't familiar with Wesley, he was originally a shack mapper, and we hosted a contest, for art a map contest that was hosted by, oh my gosh, why am I tripping over my words? So Arctic, we partnered with Arctic to sponsor an art contest, and he won first and second place, I believe. Um, Oh no, that was a different one. But he won first place with a
Mhm.
partner, and he did all the level design. We were really happy with how our harbor turned out, so we purchased the rights for harbor, and then we remade it from the ground up internally. Um, and we decided to hire him as well because we really liked the way he approaches level design. And he came from the CS:GO, or was a 1.6, but he was making CS maps before Pavlov, so
Mm.
it was a really nice
Yeah,
natural
I
transition
know
over.
the Shack community is a huge fan of Harbor, and I'm very fond. I'm actually quite fond of Harbor because it's it's like a winter themed map, and just all the different like color schemes on it really
Mhm.
make it pretty. And it plays really well too, and it's like kind of like a slightly faster paced map, and so I think between those two formulas, the Shack community really likes that map. And speaking of that, this was actually going to be one of my later questions, but I figure I'll ask it now. So speaking of Harbor, is there any possibility of seeing Harbor come into PC at all?
It's not currently planned.
Not currently planned. Okay.
It is- yeah.
It's figure I might ask, because I know I'm gonna have a million comments asking that. But yeah, so we kind of touched on like the theme and whatnot. So just to kind of further go along that, is there any like actual lore behind the maps that you can share?
Not really. It's we kind of give Wesley the creative freedom to come up with the themes,
Hmm.
and he just kind of just what comes out of his brain. Some lore kind of emerges like through the development process, but it's very loose. But that's just Pavlov in general has very very loose lore. There's some association with Aurora and some of the maps, but it's just breadcrumbs. It's not really
Hmm.
direct references or anything sort of established or cohesive.
Yeah.
Uh, it would be very difficult to make Pavlov a cohesive lore,
Yeah.
just because of we've got TTT, we've got the hide,
Yeah.
uh, SND, and then how do you fit all those together? Because when it comes to TTT, you really can't. So yeah, I
Yeah. No, I get you. And it's
was
funny.
thinking I had more to share, but my brain's just like, nope,
Yeah.
that's all.
No, I get it. And it's funny too because, no matter what, like if there's, not a lot of established lore, if there's like a little bit or a lot, players are going to come up with it anyways. And I think
Right.
one thing that I saw immediately was like, oh, both sites on Autumn, for example, have these like black shipping containers that have like a PMC insignia on it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, so my brain is like, oh, Autumn is like this European town that's been taken over by a PMC, and it's the attacker's job to try to destroy those weapon shipments, and it's the defender's job to try to defend those weapon shipments. And just kind of going into the lore of like like what that PMC is, but people will get creative with that. But I think it's cool that you can also leave it open too, because some people won't take it that deep, and some people will go all the way to the wall with it.
Yeah.
So, um,
We do try
so
to add context to why are these two warring parties like in this environment.
mhm,
So, I mean, that's not a new, concept. Counter Strike has been doing that for
years.
years. So, we kind of just took cues from that. Of course, I feel like Counter Strike does a much better job of it than we do.
Yeah.
Because they'll have uh, like around spawns, you'll see like the van with the ladder over it, and that's how they hopped over the fence to get to that spawn, and that's
Mhm.
that's where the CTs start, for example. And we don't quite have that level of detail, but I think we have some. So
Yeah, no, and that's totally fine. And I mean, and some people will care about that kind of thing, and some people will pay no attention to it and not even realize it. And I think for those that do pay a good amount of attention on both maps, you'll find a few things here and there that are pretty interesting. I'm not going to spoil anything, of course,
Mhm.
but you know, it's there'll
I
be
like to
some.
add a lot of Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Since we did Art House, like the Easter eggs have just like ramped up and
Oh
just like
yeah. And
inside jokes.
I'll say we noticed a few last night, and it's pretty. They were pretty funny. Definitely things that I wasn't expecting, but definitely wowed me. But you know, so we talked about aesthetic a lot, but getting more into kind of like the nitty gritty. So roughly, how long have these maps been in development? Like 6 months, a year? What's kind of like the time frame that these maps have been in development?
So we started on Autumn first. Then the design for Carnival came in, and we kind of split the teams, and they kind of like flip flopped. So they'll work on Autumn for a while, and then they'll get burnt out on it, so they'll switch to Carnival,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So it was about I want to say like 8 months of development from first block out when we first started blocking out. And how we typically do everything. We do everything in sort of a white material block
Mhm.
out, and for uh, what do you call it? Kind of like anchor points or landmarks. So if you have landmark objects, we would color those like a certain color so it doesn't feel like a white maze.
Mhm.
It looks very Mirror's Edge. It's pretty funny. And Wesley was talking about it. He's like, I wish I could make a Mirror's Edge game. That'd be so tight. Or we release the map like this because I love the aesthetic.
Yeah.
But it once that happens, we pass it on to QA, and we just play the heck out of the layout because we don't want to commit too far into a layout and just realize, oh, we got to rip everything up and start all over. So
Mhm.
we try to really pressure test it as early as possible, and then
Yeah.
once that happens, it goes to our concept artist. Our concept artist then tries to kind of create some visual styles, and he does some research about the areas. Other mapper or other artists will do some of their own research too. Yeah, so that's kind of how it progressed. Once we had the concept art, the artist would go and start working on the main pieces, the kit bash, if you want to call it
Yeah.
that.
Mhm. And that's you mentioned like blocking and everything, and that's even in my own adventures of like making maps, that's something that you have to do a lot. Is you just start with a blockout. You don't even touch assets.
Right.
you push asset. It's very tempting to put assets in right away, but it's so you have to kind of resist that because you need to make the map fit perfectly, play perfectly, and so that's kind of if I had any, and I'm sure you would agree too, any bit of advice for anybody that wants to get into map making, especially like if you want to do like the S&D side or TDM side, you just got to start with a blackout first and just
Mhm.
play the hell out of it, and
Yep.
then you can go into assets. But it's even after play test the blackout a few more times, play test it a few more times after that because it's so tempting to put in assets, and so um, it's definitely interesting to kind of see like the behind the scenes of like what is the process of like really making a map. And you can we never saw like the blackout of anything of Autumn. We saw like a almost finalized version of it, still work in progress, but so it's interesting to see how people will tackle it just going right into it versus QA having literally gone all the way from blackout phase to the final art pass.
Mhm.
Um, so we kind of spoke about it a little bit too, but you mentioned wanting to make some really good quality like SND maps and some really good base maps. So what were some of the team's biggest goals when creating these two maps?
Uh, well, I guess the main goals were try to have a competitive, viable content.
Mm-hmm.
Number one. Number two, we wanted to raise the bar on the quality of the art. So um, we like to, not to toot our own horn, but I really think that it's close to AAA level quality as best as you can get in VR.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we don't have quite the same engine, but I'd like to think that they're sort of on par with Half-Life Alyx in some senses.
Right.
Half-Life Alyx has a wonderful lighting engine, so um, it really makes their assets look so good. And if we were kind of shown in a similar light, I feel like we would stand up to that level of standard.
I mean, I can definitely get behind that, especially with Autumn Carnival too, in a sense. But Autumn just definitely like everything feels so like meticulously crafted, and these are the first two maps that are like just if I'm correct, totally in house. Assets and art, the whole nine yards.
Oh
So
yes.
it's it's great to see that you guys want to continue to push the bar, especially for VR, which is pretty much indie studio dominated at this point. So just seeing what indie studios really can put into their work, and I think Autumn and Carnival really just exemplify what you as a team are capable of. Uh, so
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like it's a it, it's really hard not to feel pride when you play it.
mhm.
Like as a dev, not me personally, speaking for the others, because I didn't make that map, but it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we achieved this. And the bloom coming over from the sunlight over the buildings. Shout out to Bloom Guy. Um, it's just like, gosh, it almost wants to put a tear in my eye because it's just like so pretty
Yeah.
virtual.
No, I agree with that. I mean, yeah, it's like I said, I mean, we all had a lot of fun playing it, and like I think everybody was like, "Wow, these maps are like these are good." Like we want to
Oh,
play more. We want to play
good.
more. So, and I think you just basically touched on it, but I'll ask for asking sake. So, what is like some of your personal favorite aspects or features from both of these maps?
Probably all the Easter eggs, because a lot of them are jokes made at my expense. Not like mean jokes, but uh, over time of having my pictures posted in the developer channels, they've made emojis and memes out of it. So some of them got applied to the maps, and yeah, I I just love really the level of detail Um, Not even on just like the playable parts of the map, but some of the unplayable parts
Mhm.
that you can kind of spectate. Uh, and there's some fun little things that we did there as well. And one thing I was really impressed with was the roller coaster design on Carnival, and our uh, our lead artist created or scripted a way to like be able to generate it on a spline. Uh, so it wasn't like a super difficult process because when we first like started talking about making a map that's based off a dilapidated amusement park, and they were mentioning a roller coaster, I'm just like, oh my gosh, how much modeling is that going to take? And he spoke up. He's like, "Oh, it's not going to be so bad. I can make a thing that can kind of modularity create that easily, and then you can just kind of manually touch it up later." So
Mhm.
that's another thing that I was quite proud of.
Yeah. And I love how part of the roller coaster is actually like a pretty integral part of the map because it's a
Yeah.
way for the defenders to enter a site there.
Mhm.
And it's it's a place that you can actually kind of use it as a defensive position. So I really like how that kind of plays into the map, and it's not just like an outside part of the map that looks
Yeah.
pretty.
I'm glad you noticed that because that was definitely a conscious decision on our part because we didn't want something that looked so pretty that you couldn't touch, you know?
Hmm.
So having that as like, the what do they call it? The station,
Hmm.
the track station, as
Yeah.
like, a really central part of the map was something that we kind of deliberately worked on very early during the layout stages.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So these two maps, they'll be coming in what I presume will be update 30. Is that correct? Are we on update 30 now? For
Yep.
when All right, so update 30.
Correct.
So the banger question, do we have an estimated date for when that update will be coming? And will there be any sort of open beta before that update?
Yes. So we want to have an open beta just for folks to play around with it. Um, but as far as like when it will actually come out, I'm not sure.
Hmm.
I I really don't like giving estimations
Yeah.
because those change constantly.
Hmm.
It was really difficult because we had to. PlayStation has this thing where if your install size is over a threshold, and I think either 20, it's either 20 or 30 gigabytes. I can't remember. But once you go over that threshold, you have to support a feature called PlayGo, and that's where you can partially download the game and play it while it's still downloading. Um, that takes a lot of refactoring involved because you have to break up the whole game in chunks and kind of have to let it run bare bones.
Hmm.
Um, but I think we were able to work some magic to include the new maps, but also keep it under that threshold. So we
Hmm.
didn't have to actually do that, but it still took quite a bit of time to kind of optimize assets to allow for that. Um, but there's other features that we're also working on currently that aren't quite finished yet. So and it's a real big pain to update now
Yeah.
because we've got two platforms that are cross-platform. We have to test both platforms. PlayStation has unique issues that PC doesn't have that we have to like account for,
Right.
and it's quite frustrating because it's really nonsensical about why they happen. Like it doesn't make sense to us, and we've done a lot of testing, having to back and forth, trying to contact Epic and be like, "What is the deal with this?"
Yeah.
Um, with the Seinfeld accent. But yeah, so it's really hard to like know for sure when it's going to come out. I want to say at least first quarter, if that's
First or second quarter, give or take.
yeah, if
Yeah,
that's an acceptable
and
answer.
it's a loose estimate. It's not like a this will definitely happen at
Right.
this point. Yeah, but it's and these are some of the things, some of these limitations that you have for developing with multiple platforms. Like these are not things that everybody necessarily knows about or hears about. So, these are some of the challenges that, any team would face. I mean, you see some of these other VR games, they've released for PSVR 2 and whatnot, and, trying to get everything to work crossplay. Like it's not the easiest thing in the world either to get
No,
everything working together. And, so these are some of the challenges that, I think any VR developer team will have to face.
not every team. We kind of took on a lot, just out of we wanted cool things.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if you really think about it, Pavlov's not just three platforms, right? We're not just Shack, we're not just PC, we're not just PS5,
Mm-hmm.
but we also have the mod kit, community servers, Pav TV.
Right.
Those are all can pretty much be considered separate platforms or separate projects,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all intermingled. So, one can affect the other. And when you have so many different aspects of ways to break the game, it
Mm-hmm.
can break a lot, especially with the amount of technical debt that we've incurred over the years.
Yeah.
Because Pavlov's gone through, I'm going to say 3 engine changes, maybe 4, or engine upgrades, I should say.
Yeah, because you had 415 to 421 and then 421 to 427 technically, and then it was like, oh, we're gonna go to 5.0. So yeah, that's
Oh yeah,
a few.
I forgot about 2.7. We did put that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we did it again. So all these engine upgrades are a massive pain.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it'll be easy, but as you dig into it, it doesn't turn out to be the case, and you end up going past a point of no return because you have what's that word where you like invest too much time into it, and then you're like, well, I got to keep going now.
Point of no return works.
Yeah, there you go. Point of no return. So, we couldn't go back to the old engine. Like there's a lot of backlash with the last update when we went to 5 on PC. Clearly, people weren't really happy with Workshop going away.
Mm-hmm.
The mods had to be, re-uploaded. That's not a mod IO issue. That's definitely just an engine upgrade issue. There's no sort of backwards compatibility out of the box that you can support in Unreal, as far as we're aware. So the other option would have been to just keep it on the old stack, but that would have erased a year's worth of work. And that's why it took so long for the dang thing to come out,
Mm-hmm.
because we kept encountering more and more issues with Unreal 5, and we had to keep in contact with Epic. We had to keep in contact with Valve, which are not easy people to get a hold of, by the way.
Yeah.
And contact with and Meta as well as the OpenXR consortium. And I have a funny story about that. If you allow me to divert a little bit, because
Yeah, go for it.
funny. So I was. We have a contact at Epic, and we were kind of telling them about our OpenXR issues. And he's like, "Hey, do you think you and an engineer could, join us in a meeting and then like talk about your issues?" I'm like, yeah, sure. So we figured it would be, him and maybe another senior engineer. So I bring Mark along, Mark Day, and so I was like, Mark, would you be able to, speak to these issues? Like, you're the one that can actually like put into words like the actual problems that we're facing. And so we joined this meeting, and it's 40 people on Zoom. And it's the OpenXR consortium, and it's like director level, people for these companies, and they're grilling us on like what we're doing and like the results of that. And so we would get asked a question, we would respond, and it would be basically like 5 different companies pointing fingers at each other on whose fault it was and why that was the case. And we just like really, we got, I don't want to say thrown under the bus, but we were just like not expecting that. So when we joined the call and there's like 40 people there and they're all staring at us, we're just like, oh, what did we walk into?
Like you thought it was going to be a little private meeting of like, maybe 5-10 people. And then it just turns out to be this
We thought it
whole.
was just going to be epic. We didn't think it was going to be, Valve, Facebook, I think Magic Leap was there, and it's just like, wow, all these
That's
people.
that seems insanely overwhelming to say the least. When you're just trying to get like an issue or two fixed, or and it's like, oh hey, here's all these like high level execs, and yeah,
Yeah,
that
very
it's like
very smart people.
it's like, how are you supposed to get anything done?
Exactly.
But
But what was really surprising was, I don't know if this is like inside baseball, but it felt very disorganized. I'm not sure if that's how all Cronus Group conversations go, or if this was just like, let's get to the bottom of these issues this dev is having. Um, but it felt very not
not cohesive. Yeah, I was gonna say you know just about as much as I do, maybe just a little bit more. So, uh, your word is definitely there on that one. But that's yeah, I mean, and that's that's good insight. Like these are some of the challenges that y'all will face, and that's not something everybody like understands. A lot of, especially I think it really kind of started with games being able to update like every month or every week, and like people just kind of demand like, when's the next update, and it's like things like these take time, and you got to understand that. Like I get waiting can be hard, but at the same time it's like not everybody knows like the million things a developer has to go through, especially when trying to make sure everything works, because you don't want to like update and then have something be completely broken and then everybody annoyed. So I you know
right.
I feel with you guys on that one a lot. So
And we're
uh
not blameless. I'm not trying to say that we're not at
yeah.
fault for our mistakes, because
Mhm.
we definitely do make mistakes, or perhaps like not the best judgment call. And really, it's really easy to do that after the fact, but it's not easy to foresee a lot of the time.
Oh yeah.
We kind of figured there might be some backlash going away with Workshop, but moving to Mod.io. But we thought, it wouldn't be as big as it was in actuality. Um, some people's, the reasons why they prefer Workshop are completely valid, but they're kind of minor in the grand scheme of things. But some of the negative aspects of Workshop that Mod.io improves on aren't really praised either, or if they're noticed at all. Um, and that's fine. It's But that comes with this territory, right?
Mhm.
If you're gonna do something bold, like at least own up to it, and which we do. Um, are we gonna go back to Workshop? No, that's just it's too much to go back, and it's still already a whole bunch of old legacy maps, which there's no real way to really distinctly kind of tag them as compatible to which version,
Yeah.
nor would it bring those maps back
Mhm.
anyways.
Yeah, because I remember way back in the day when you were doing 4.15 to 4.21, like people would
Mhm.
have to mark maps, like they'd have to put in the title like beta for people to understand. They're like, hey,
Yeah,
this is only supported on the new engine, not on
right,
4.15. So, you know, that's like the only way to do it
right.
realistically. But
Workshop
yeah,
doesn't have that many great tools for doing like batch processing or anything like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
At least in the Workshop sense.
Hmm. But so let's see. Um, so we talked a little bit about update 30, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit more. But so these two maps, of course, are coming to PC and PSVR 2. And so for the Shack community, because I know I'm going to get a million questions about it, is there any possibility of seeing Autumn and Carnival on Shack?
Yes, we are working on them right now.
Yeah, awesome. Just needed to get that confirmation out of the way,
Yeah.
because I swear, like every single like Pavlov related video that I see some people do, it's like half the comment section is just, "Is this coming to Shack? Is this coming to Shack? Is this for Shack?" So we have confirmation officially that these two maps will be coming to Shack at some point. It might not coincide with PC release. It might. We don't know, but at some point, Autumn and Carnival will be on Shack. is what we can say, I guess, right now, if I'm correct on that statement. Cool.
Yes.
All right. So, um, you know, we're getting two really, really good high quality maps. And so that's definitely a lot. But what are some other things that PC and PSVR2 players can expect coming to update 30? Is there anything, updated mod kit? Is there anything like weapon skins like we saw with the Shack release, or a weapon skin store? Or is it going to be more bug fix and optimizations, or is it going to be a little bit of both?
It's going to have some bug fixes. I don't believe we're going to release a skin store quite yet. That'll go on Shack. So we're going to release PC and PS5 before Shack, I believe. But there's some other things that we're kind of working on, but we're not sure if it's going to make the update. So I don't quite want to say they're going to be included. But we are doing some, tests on matchmaking and things of that nature. We had some in progress matchmaking at some point. We had to delay it and put it in the back burner because it just wasn't quite up to what we wanted. But primarily the mod kit, we're going to be super proud of. There's a lot of limitations the current mod kit has, and I've spoken to this to others on other interviews, but you can essentially add dependencies, which is a really, really big deal, especially for development and collaboration. For example, Mark made a jump mod and put it on Mod.io. So if you want jumping, you could just add that to your map as a dependency, and then now your map has jumping. You don't have to share, a plugin. You don't have to zip up any files and share it over the internet. You just straight up subscribe to it as a dependency. And that could work the same for custom objects as well, or custom guns. Obviously you want to list the IDs in your map or in your description so that other mappers can implement it. But you spawn weapons with a weapon item spawner just as vanilla by just, having it as a dependency and having the item ID, of what that object or gun is.
Yeah, I've seen some of that kind of creep into the workshop already, and with some custom weapon mods. I don't know. I think maybe some there's been some stuff maybe in the push community about certain vehicles, or certain say like airstrikes or whatnot. So those have kind of crept their way into some of the push maps. And so that's definitely, I would say that definitely makes it more user friendly, because I would think if you wanted to I know Yoshi back in the day had the jump mod for 4.21, and it was I'm sure if you wanted to have jumping in your map, you had to, figure out how to add Yoshi's jump mod to your map, probably in engine, I would assume.
Right. And there was also some stuff going around where, somebody would share their work, but they would put, their own sort of watermark on it, or, contributor or authoring in some sort of way, jump mod by Yoshi. And people were taking these project files and removing the attribution out, or placing their own. That's kind of scummy stuff to do. Yeah. So with this new system, you can't remove it, right? You subscribe to the dependency. If somebody wants to attribute, a certain mod or aspect of the game, to them, by all means, they should be able to. So we don't have to worry about, stolen work in this case, or misattribution.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool positive thing, I think, as well. And one thing I didn't quite mention was you can separate all your assets from the level and run the assets as a mod dependency for that level. So what does that mean in practice, right? So you can basically package all your assets into a mod and then upload them. It's not a level, it's just the assets. But you can reference those assets in your level as a different UGC and upload that level as a map. And so what that means is if you need to make some map adjustments, move some items around or just reconfigure the map in general, you can just upload the level and download the level and it's mere megabytes. And so when you're trying to iterate your map, you're not having to wait ages to upload it.
Mhm.
Every time you make a minor change or do like a crazy light build, um, it should drastically reduce the time of testing, I want to say. And that was a criticism that's been levied at us, and we took to heart. So we wanted to kind of consider that into this new mod kit. So
Mhm.
we there was a lot of care and consideration in the mod kit that we
Yeah.
placed.
I was gonna say too, so, I'm just kind of looking back over the years, like the modding community, they've made some really awesome creations. I know we've kind of gotten away from Autumn and Carnival, but this kind of ties into update 30.
Yeah,
Um, so modding
it's going to have
community,
far more impact than Autumn and Carnival. I'll say that. So I
yeah.
think it's important to cover.
Yeah. So, I mean, the modding community has done some great stuff over Pavlov's almost 7-year history at this point, which is crazy to
Mhm.
think about. And throughout the years, you guys at Vankrupt have really generously supported them, with mod kit updates, with some of the map making competitions as well. We had a PC one in 2021. We had a Shack one, I think, in 2022. And then most recently, we had a CQB map making competition. So, you mentioned, we talked a great deal about the mod kit. And so, is there anything else in addition, that I'm just kind of trying to figure out, like, so how else are you guys going to continue to support map makers and mod makers? Are we going to see any more, like, maybe map making competitions in the future, or, any other, planned things for the mod kit that might not make it right now, but, maybe we'll make it in the future?
So we want to kind of feel like we've done the best we could to make the best kit that we can.
Hmm.
Uh, if there's any necessity to like add more features as they're suggested, uh, and we find them within scope, yeah, we'd love to kind of include those. Um, it's very easy to run away with what could be possible, but when you start to actually engineer those solutions in, it just like it's difficult to justify the amount of time you have to spend doing it.
Hmm.
Um, and we already get enough enough backlash that we take forever to update the game, deservedly so. But it's just like at the state of this game right now, it's getting updates out and iterating faster is becoming increasingly difficult, because of as I was talking about the technical debt that we've inherited over the years.
Hmm.
Um, it's very very easy for things to break, on some of the most simple of changes, and it's kind of funny how that works. It just causes this cascading effect often at times. But we are starting to look into broader horizons, and so we're kind of wanting to do a new project. It's been something that we've been kind of mulling around for a while. We don't have anything solid to announce. It's just we're kind of experimenting right now with a new foundation, just to see, like, starting fresh, uh, building out, you know, with the knowledge we have now, instead of what we had in or what Dave had in 2016.
Yeah.
So that's we kind of are ready to kind of sunset Pavlov. We still want to support it.
Hmm.
We still will ship updates. It's not something that's going to go away anytime soon. But eventually, we want to work on something new, and we want to get away from this old code base. And
Yeah.
yeah, so when we develop this new code base and kind of do our experimentations, our hope is that that could serve as a platform for multiple projects. That way, we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel every time we want to do something.
Right. And that kind of ties into my final question. So, you've made your two really high quality maps. You've sent
Hmm.
out update 30 down the road. What's in store for the future of Vankrupt Games and Pavlov as a whole?
Yeah, we want to keep making VR games. Uh, we considered doing like a flat screen game at some point. We did have a game jam internally, a couple of years ago, And that was a fun little thing to do. We split it into 2 teams. We had a central theme and assigned, 2 project leaders to kind of make the decisions. And then we came out with like 2 projects, and one of which was quite beloved and well liked. And we considered to like develop it into a fully fledged game and release it.
Mhm.
We haven't done it. We still have the project, and it's something that we could maybe consider like getting out into the wild at some point. But yeah, we still love VR. We want to keep doing VR.
Mhm.
There's just it's just a wild west. It almost feels like we've got it all figured out, like early 3D games, and trying to figure out how to like make controls work
Yeah.
well. Yeah. It's really difficult to play some of those old PlayStation and Nintendo games. Uh, but that's what it feels like. It feels like the standards haven't been made, right? It's an FPS game on mouse and keyboard. Uh, there's a standard, right? You're
Mhm.
not using arrow keys. You're using WASD, unless you're left-handed. You might be using arrow keys, but
Yeah.
people aren't really kind of shaking up uh, like the general obvious, things like spacebar has to be jump. These are like very primitive examples, but
Yeah.
um, obviously you can be creative in what you do with your game, but a lot of all that stuff is figured out already, and if you deviate that from that, then you're going to get backlash, as you
Mhm.
should, because like who wants to go back to 10 controls? Like nobody.
Yeah.
Um, so, but VR kind of feels like in this place where there's still like pioneering going on, and it feels really good to be in that area of.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound pompous and say like trailblazing, but it's just like there's so much unknown, and that's really exciting. So
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
it's game
it's.
development on hard mode,
Mhm.
because you're doing a lot of work for a small audience compared to established consoles and you know
Right. And then you look at PC VR development, it's like, does everything work for like the Valve Index, for the HTC Vive, for this HTC Vive, for the Rift
oh god.
S? Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
let's talk about OpenXR again and that.
but I mean, I definitely consider VR to be like kind of where like gaming was in like the early 2000s, where it's like things are like just they're boiling up right now, like
Mhm.
you know and like Pavlov, for example, it came out officially I think in 2017, like open to the world, and that was like a really early time, like that was HTC Vive and I think like a Rift or a Rift S, and that's like
Yep.
the only options that you
Like
had.
maybe one. Yeah.
Is pre-index, like, but it's, and I think both from a developer point and like a player point, like people are still figuring out like what makes a really good quality VR game. Like, does it need to have like all this different type of locomotion? Does it need to have like this kind of weapon handling? Like what is necessary for a VR game in order for it to really stand out? And I think that's still kind of coming along, so to speak. But it's interesting to see, and it'll be crazy to try to predict where VR is going to be in 5 years and 10 years. Um, and so it's it definitely has to be a cool thing to kind of be on the front side of that, and taking the risk and developing a VR game, but ultimately getting something out of it, and you can look back in a few years and be like, hey, this was one of the first big VR projects, and we were a part of that.
Right, and it's really fun to kind of think about that. I mean, obviously, there's a young audience that plays Pavlov. Pavlov is a mature game. We do not encourage kids to play it. However, kids will play Pavlov, either hopefully with their parents' permission. But what's really fun to kind of reflect on is like we're forming like memories for these folks.
Mhm.
We're forming memories that people are going to reflect on in like 10, 20 years, and be like, oh, remember that game Pavlov? That game was so fun. I had a great time. I spent so many hours on it. um, and it just feels eerily odd not odd, but exhilarating almost to kind of think about how people reflect fondly or not so fondly, considering how much people didn't enjoy the last update. Um, but hopefully, the positive memories trump the negative. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I think ultimately that, I'm looking forward to seeing what Vankrupt as a whole does with, update 30,
mm,
and what you guys kind of do in the future for, for VR as a whole, and for your studio as well. So I mean, once again, I just got to, say thank you for letting me and my group of 9 friends, if you will. I wish, it was one of those, like, you feel bad when you can't include everybody, but obviously you have to you have to keep
gotta
it.
pick your favorite children.
Yeah, well, children loosely, but yeah, no, I mean, I just have to say thank you for letting us do, help you guys test Autumn and Carnival. And I mean, I think honestly, from like the S&D community, from my memory, like that's the first time that we've had kind of such an inclusive collaboration like that. Just to
Yeah,
even be able to test a map like that, and I'm sure we're all here to help you guys test things if you ever need, because I'm sure there's some folks that are never going to go away, but but it's it's cool to be able to, like, do that. And that's something that I think pretty fondly of VR is how how invested you can get in the community in general. And it's harder to get invested in a community like of like a large AAA game that has sold, like, god knows how many copies, and you have 3 different companies making the game, versus you play a little Pavlov, you get really into it, you start interacting. And that's kind of been a fond memory for me for these past 3 years, is kind of getting involved and doing all that. So I mean, I have to
absolutely.
thank you guys for making a kick-ass game that I've put way too many hours in. But
We yeah, we were thinking about doing an open beta just to get people to try out the new maps. And then, we wanted to do like, professional trailer for them. And then we said, well, what if we, did something different? Like, what if we just like let somebody that's, a content creator that makes Pavlov content, like, what if we just like had them get like access to the map and let them kind of play it early and then feature it on their channel? Have a little bit of, synergy going on.
mm,
So, hopefully this turns out to be a positive thing.
yeah.
Uh, Spread awareness that hey, content's coming, or yeah. And plus, I'm a big fan of yours, so
Oh,
I
well,
always like the content and like the deep dives that you've done, and
yeah,
you've also reported issues and things like that that the VR, or I'm sorry, the League community is kind of encountering. Not all of which that we could address or fix,
hmm.
especially when it comes to the I guess the hit registration. So I mean, we are built. We're built on the Fortnite engine, like that. We are kind of beholden to the net
Yeah,
code that is Unreal Engine. So
yeah,
obviously, we could do our own custom sort of things, but
yeah,
it's really hard to kind of like make a better one than Epic did.
yeah.
Uh, so it's
And it's not an easy problem to fix either. But
it's
either
yeah. I mean, there's AAA games where people complain about hit reg and
yeah, it's
lag and things like that.
gamers are always going to be gamers in that regard, I think.
Yeah. I
So
mean, if you think about it, you're kind of shooting bullets millimeters from away from each other, and you have to send these packets to across the ocean, and then those
yeah,
packets have to come back. It's like there's going to be, there's no perfect hit
yeah,
reg. I
solution
don't
to that.
think.
Yeah, no, but
I think
even then, I mean,
even CS:GO 2 is starting to get heat for their hit reg. No,
yeah.
are they?
I
I must have
there was
misread
there was
it.
definitely some early issues in CS2 between like some hitbox stuff and
Was it the subticks?
yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, if Valve can kind of trip up sometimes, like anyone can. So.
Everybody's prone to it, but I mean that even then, like that's one thing of, like, many like good features that the game offers.
Yeah,
So I mean,
yeah.
um, you know, I'm
When
looking
they started
forward.
showing off their shaders, we were thoroughly impressed. We were like, wow,
Yeah.
like
Uh,
shooting bullets through smoke.
yeah. That's I love the new smokes. I have to say again. I mean, those
Our
are
smokes.
yeah, your guys' smokes. Those are miles better than the old ones.
So we made adjustments to the smokes after we saw Valve's implementation. We
Hmm.
didn't directly adopt all of its features, but we did take, a few things off of like
Yeah.
how we render it and kind of implemented that in.
Hmm.
Our tech artist, Simon.
Yeah. But you know, ultimately, I just have to say, thank you again for these past. Oh my God, it's been like 3.5 years since I started playing
Yeah.
this game. And like I said, I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with in the future, and I look forward to seeing where the future of Pavlov takes us. And I mean, I also look forward to making this whole video for uh I'm guessing the interview might have to be a separate thing unless this video is gonna be like an hour and a half, but it'll still be good anyways. I'm sure
Split it
people
up into two. Who cares?
yeah, I'm sure people will enjoy the insight, but either way, like I said, thank you for all the amazing memories on Pavlov, and it's crazy to think how far the studios come, and a lot of players have come from years past to now. So I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to the future, and I'm excited to see what's across the horizon.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for you're such a positive force in the community, and that could be a really difficult thing to do because uh, it's easy to have negative thoughts
Hmm.
on things that you love.
Yeah.
When people lash out at us, sometimes we have to remind ourselves, they're doing that because they love Pavlov. They love the
Hmm.
game. They love what it used to be. Perhaps maybe they don't love it anymore, but it's out of love that they're kind of upset. It's not generally out of hate completely.
Yeah.
Some people are fervently anti-Pavlov, and that's totally fine. It's okay to like different games and different content and the ways that they create it, but you're such a really positive person, and I really appreciate that about you. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Shit, dude, you're gonna bring a tear to my eye. No, I appreciate sincerely. I do appreciate that. But anyways, I think that will wrap it up for this. So thank you for your time. You can look forward to update 30 coming out decently soon. I'm sure there's still a couple things to wrap up and whatnot, but you can look forward to some updated mod kit stuff, and you can look forward, of course, to Autumn and Carnival, which you will see in
Maybe a
it
few other
might
days.
either be a different video or it might be the same video that I just wrapped this up all in. So
Yeah.
again, thank you for letting us have an exclusive look at it, and otherwise, we will catch you around.
All right. Hit that notification bell.
Yes, and subscribe and hit that like button if you enjoy this too.
Yeah. Leave a comment down below.
For sure.
Great.
But anyways, thanks for your time, and we'll catch you around.